I was at airport security with my shoes off my belt looped through my fingers and my boarding pass lying flat in the gray plastic tray, like it might disappear if I didn't keep an eye on it. Everything was moving at the slow, irritated pace it always does at TSA, that half shuffle where nobody makes eye contact and everyone pretends they're not stressed. I checked the clock mounted above the metal detector. I wasn't early, but I wasn't late either. That mattered because this wasn't a vacation flight. I wasn't going to see friends or sit on a beach. I was flying out to attend my grandpa's will hearing. Probate court, scheduled for that morning. Miss it and you don't just miss a meeting. You miss your seat in the room. The tray slid forward. I stepped toward the scanner. That's when someone moved into my path. Not a TSA agent, not a supervisor. A uniformed airport police officer. Dark blue shirt, calm expression, standing just close enough that I couldn't pretend he was talking to someone else. "Ma'am," he said, low but firm. "Come with us." For half a second my brain tried to reject it. Me. I glanced over my shoulder like maybe there was another woman behind me who'd done something wrong. There wasn't. His partner stepped closer, angling her body the way people do when they're trained to block exits without making a scene. "What's this about?" I asked. "We need to ask you a few questions," he said. "Right now." The line behind me went quiet. That special kind of airport quiet where everyone suddenly has excellent hearing and terrible manners. I felt eyes on my back phones, halfway raised, people already deciding what version of this they'd tell later. "My flight is boarding soon," I said carefully. "You'll come with us," he repeated. His partner added, "Bring your ID if you have it." I reached into my carry-on slowly, the way you do when you know every movement is being watched, and pulled out my license. He took it, glanced at it, then nodded toward a glass-walled room just off the checkpoint. A table, a chair bolted to the floor. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make you feel like you were already in trouble. He sat across from me and looked at my ID again. "Lauren Whitaker," he said. "Yes." He opened a tablet and started scrolling. The screen lit his face as he read. "I'm going to read what we received," he said. "Then you can respond." I didn't interrupt. I didn't explain. I didn't apologize. Years in the Army taught me that giving emotion to authority when they're asking for facts only makes things worse. "We received a report this morning," he said. "Caller stated you're traveling today and may pose a threat." The word threat landed wrong. Not because it scared me, but because it didn't fit. "A threat to who?" I asked. He glanced down. "The public." I felt my stomach tighten, not from fear, but from recognition. That language, that exact phrasing. Vague, serious, hard to disprove quickly. "The caller claims you made statements about making people pay," he continued, "and that you may attempt to cause an incident at the airport." I kept my face neutral. Inside, everything clicked into place. "Who made the report?" I asked. "I'm not discussing that yet," he said. His partner watched me closely, like she'd been briefed to expect a breakdown. She didn't get one. "I'm flying to attend a probate hearing for my grandfather's estate," I said instead. His eyes flicked up. "Probate. Yes, this morning." He scrolled again. "The caller also claimed you've made concerning emergency calls recently." That was the tell. Emergency calls leave records, real ones anyway. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my hands visible on the table. "Officer," I said, "pull the emergency call log tied to this report. The actual call information, not the summary." He blinked. "That's not always—" "It will be there," I said, calm. "Whoever called is counting on you not checking." He studied me for a moment, then tapped the screen and opened a different panel. "Call history. Dispatch notes." I watched his face as he read. At first, nothing. Then his thumb stopped moving. His partner leaned in. "What is it?" He angled the tablet slightly away, then looked back at me. "You said your family wants you to miss this hearing," he said. "Yes." He swallowed and looked down again. "Because the reporting party is listed by name." He lifted his eyes. "And it lists your sister, Vanessa Whitaker, as the caller." The room didn't spin. It sharpened. His partner read the screen herself. "Relationship sister." Neither of them spoke for a second. "Have you ever been arrested?" the officer asked. "No." "Any restraining orders?" "Mental health holds. Pending charges." "No." He tapped again. "The report claims you said, quote, 'I'll make them pay.'" "My grandfather died," I said. "There's a will hearing today. My sister wants control of the estate. This is how she's trying to get it." His partner's expression shifted just slightly. Not sympathy. Recognition. He opened the audio file. The room filled with my sister's voice, overly calm, practiced. "This is Vanessa Whitaker," she said. "I'm calling because my sister is flying today and I'm concerned. She's not stable. She's made comments about making people pay. I'm scared she could hurt someone." The officer paused the recording. "She mentioned the probate hearing," his partner said quietly. "Yes," he replied. "She did." I nodded once. "She wants a record. Something she can point to later." He closed the tablet and stood. "We're going to document this as a retaliatory call connected to a civil matter," he said. "We'll run a quick check, but you're not being detained." "Good," I said. His partner handed me a form. Short statement. Facts only. I wrote exactly that. No adjectives, no commentary. When he slid a small receipt with an incident number across the table, I tucked it into my wallet without ceremony. Paper matters, especially later. "We'll walk you back," he said. The word walk mattered. 2 uniforms beside me as we moved through the checkpoint. Witnesses without witnesses. At the conveyor, my tray was still there. Belt, wallet, boarding pass. I put myself back together and stepped through. As soon as I cleared security, my phone buzzed. "Your itinerary has been updated." Then again, "Your flight has been canceled." I stopped near a pillar and opened the email. Canceled per customer request. I didn't swear. I didn't panic. I turned and headed straight for the airline service desk incident slip, already between my fingers. I set my phone down on the counter, slid the incident slip forward with my ID, and kept my voice even. "My flight was just canceled," I said. "I didn't request it." The airline agent looked tired until he pulled up the reservation and saw the timestamp. His fingers paused on the keyboard. One moment he said, eyes narrowing slightly as he clicked into the notes. He didn't ask why I was traveling. He didn't need to. Airports teach people not to ask questions they don't want answers to. "I'm seeing a cancellation," he said slowly. "It was done by phone." "I didn't call," I said. He nodded once, already checking another screen. The caller answered the security question. That landed exactly where it was supposed to. Not as a shock, as confirmation. "Who called?" I asked. He hesitated, then glanced at the incident slip like it had given him permission. Caller identified herself as a family member, he said. Vanessa Whitaker. I didn't react. Not outwardly. I'd learned a long time ago that visible reactions only make people defensive. Inside, I felt the shape of the day change. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was coordination. "Can you print the notes?" I asked. He looked at me, then back at the screen. "I can," he said. "It'll show the caller name and reason." "Please." The printer behind the counter whirred to life. As it did, my mind ran through the reason Vanessa would use. Not because she was creative, because she was predictable. "She said you weren't safe to travel alone," he added almost apologetically. "That you weren't in a good state of mind." Of course she did. I thanked him, folded the paper, and stepped away from the desk. I didn't argue about rebooking yet. Time was already bleeding. I needed to understand the board before I moved any pieces. I leaned against a pillar near the windows and stared out at the tarmac planes lining up like patient animals. 6 months earlier, my grandfather had called me late at night, his voice clear, annoyed that I sounded worried. "I'm not confused," he'd said. "I'm just tired of people speaking for me." He didn't say names. He didn't have to. Vanessa lived 15 minutes from him. She handled his groceries, his prescriptions, his appointments. On paper, she was the caregiver. In practice, she treated that role like ownership. If I questioned something, she'd sigh and say I didn't understand because I wasn't there. Because I was deployed. Because the army had changed me. Because distance made me unreliable. When Grandpa asked me to review a draft of his will, I told him to have a lawyer walk him through it. When he asked if I thought he should change it, I told him to do what made sense to him, not what kept the peace. He changed it anyway, not dramatically, not in a way that screamed revenge. He added structure, oversight, checks where there hadn't been any. He named me as a co-beneficiary and gave me limited authority over how certain assets were handled. Nothing flashy. Just enough to stop one person from running the table. Vanessa found out 2 weeks later. She didn't call me angry. She called me calm. Asked questions. Took notes. Said she just wanted clarity. That was how she always did it. She never fought head-on. She built file. At the service desk, I unfolded the airline printout and read it again. Caller name. Time. Reason. It looked clean. Official. Something a lawyer could wave around later and say, "See, even the airline thought she wasn't fit to travel." I pulled up the court email on my phone. The hearing time was still listed for that morning. No updates yet. That meant any attempt to move it would come last minute, framed as urgent. Vanessa liked urgency. Urgency discouraged scrutiny. I booked the next available flight without waiting for the agent to offer options. Paid out of pocket. Took the seat that nobody wanted because it cut close. When the new boarding pass hit my phone, my pulse slowed a notch. Not relief. Focus. As I walked back toward security, my phone buzzed again. A text this time. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I didn't reply. Another buzz. "The court doesn't need drama." Grandpa wouldn't want that. That one almost made me smile. Grandpa hated drama. He also hated being managed. I cleared security without incident and found a seat near the gate, the kind with a bad angle and no outlet. I sat there anyway. This wasn't the moment for comfort. It was the moment for inventory. Airport police incident number. Check. Airline cancellation notes. Check. My ID. Boarding pass. Phone charger. All of it mattered because all of it could be questioned. What Vanessa didn't know was that the night Grandpa collapsed, the dispatcher had typed notes while he was still talking. Not just times, not just addresses, names, who was present, who answered questions, who didn't pick up when called. I'd requested that record weeks ago quietly through the county office. Not because I suspected foul play. Because when people argue someone wasn't lucid, the fastest way to shut that down is contemporaneous documentation. The gate agent called for boarding. I stood with the group shoulder to shoulder with strangers and felt the weight of being publicly ordinary while privately targeted. It was a familiar feeling. The Army had trained me for it without meaning to. As I scanned my pass, my phone vibrated again. An email notification this time. Subject line, court schedule update. I opened it before stepping onto the jet bridge. The hearing time had been moved earlier by 2 hours. I didn't stop walking. I didn't look back. I stepped onto the plane, found my seat, and sat down with the email still open, reading the language twice to make sure I wasn't misinterpreting it. Emergency accommodation, requested by counsel. I buckled in and slid the airline notes into the back of my phone case with the incident slip. Paper with paper. Records with records. As the cabin door closed, I typed one message and sent it to the probate clerk's office, keeping it short and factual, the way people read when they're busy and deciding whether to take you seriously. I pressed send. Just as the engine started to spool, the vibration traveling up through the floor and into my feet, steady and unavoidable, like the realization that whatever Vanessa was doing next was already in motion. My thumb hovered over the send icon for a second before I locked my phone and slid it into the seat back pocket. The plane hadn't left the gate yet, and I didn't want to give myself time to overthink the wording. I'd said what mattered. Facts only. No emotion, no speculation. A flight attendant stopped beside my row and smiled. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said. And it was in the narrow sense that nothing else could be fixed from 30,000 feet. As the plane pushed back, my body did what it always does when control shifts out of my hands. My breathing slowed. My shoulders dropped. Training doesn't erase stress, but it teaches you where to put it so it doesn't get in the way. Once we leveled off, I pulled the airline notes back out and read them again, not because I needed the information, but because repetition turns anxiety into data. Caller name. Time. Reason. Each line matched the police report in tone, if not in purpose. Concerned family member. Safety. Not stable. Vanessa had learned something important over the years. If you frame an accusation as concern, institutions lean forward instead of pushing back. My phone buzzed with a response from the probate clerk's office. No greeting. Just a single sentence acknowledging receipt of my message and confirming my name was on the docket. It wasn't reassurance. It was a door still open. I paid for the in-flight Wi-Fi before the seatbelt sign even turned off. The connection lagged, then caught. Messages loaded in a stack, one from my unit administrator checking in on my leave paperwork. I replied with a thumbs-up equivalent in words and moved on. Another from an unknown number. This doesn't have to get ugly. I deleted it without replying. The court portal refreshed, and a new entry appeared beneath the time change. A motion had been filed. I didn't open it yet. I knew what it would say before I read it. Vanessa never improvised. She escalated. When I finally tapped into the document, the language was exactly what I expected. Formal, polished, detached. It claimed I'd been detained by airport police due to safety concerns, that my absence from the hearing was unavoidable, and that immediate action was required to protect the estate. Detained. Not questioned. Not delayed. Detained. That word mattered. I scrolled to the signature line. Counsel for Vanessa Whitaker. Filed that morning. My jaw tightened, not from anger but from the audacity of how cleanly the lie had been dressed. This wasn't a family argument anymore. This was an attempt to create a record that didn't exist and walk it into a courtroom before anyone had time to challenge it. I pulled the airport incident slip from my phone case and set it on the tray table. No arrest. No cuffs. No detention. Cleared to proceed. It contradicted the motion line by line. The Wi-Fi stuttered again, and I waited it out instead of tapping the screen like that ever helped. When it stabilized, I opened a new email and started assembling what I had the way I'd learned to assemble briefings overseas. Header, attachments, short sentences, senses, no adjectives. Before I could send it, another notification popped up. New message from Vanessa. I stared at it for a second, then opened it. They're worried about you. This is for your own good. That one almost earned a reply. Almost. Instead, I took a screenshot and added it to the draft email. The flight hit mild turbulence enough to rattle the overhead bins. I steadied the tray table with one hand and kept typing with the other. Airport incident number. Airline cancellation notes. Screenshot of the message. 3 attachments. All time-stamped. All boring. All lethal in the right order. The clerk's automated response came back first, warning that filings couldn't be accepted by email. I didn't argue with it. I read the rest of the page, found the secure exhibit inbox listed in the footer, and forwarded everything there, instead copying the attorney who'd drafted my grandfather's will. That email didn't bounce. My phone rang a minute later. The attorney's name lit up the screen. I just saw the motion, he said without preamble. Where are you? On a plane, I said. They moved the hearing. I know, he replied. They're claiming you were detained. I wasn't, I said. And I sent proof. I see it, he said after a pause. Good work. I exhaled slowly, not in relief, but in confirmation that the signal had landed. They're also asking to be appointed temporary executor, he added. Urgent administration. So they can act before I'm in the room, I said. That's the idea, he replied. The judge hasn't ruled yet. Will he, I asked. That depends on how clean their story is, he said, and how fast we make it messy. The line went quiet for a second as he shifted papers on his end. I imagined him standing in a hallway, phone tucked between shoulder and ear, scanning filings with the same expression he'd worn when Grandpa had asked him to explain again why checks and balances mattered. Stay reachable, he said. I'll update you. The call ended, and I stared at the tray table until the turbulence passed. Vanessa had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Not because she'd lied to the police. That was bad but deniable. Because she'd carried that lie forward, polished it, and handed it to a judge. The Wi-Fi icon flickered again. A new message loaded from the clerk's secure inbox. Exhibits received. Will be associated with the case. No promises, no tone, just acknowledgement. I closed my eyes for 3 seconds and reopened them. The plane hummed steadily, indifferent to family disputes and probate schedules. I folded the incident slip once more and slid it back into my phone case, the paper creasing exactly where it had before. By the time the seatbelt sign chimed off again, my phone vibrated with another notification from the court system, the subject line short and procedural. The kind that usually goes unnoticed, unless you're the person someone is trying very hard to keep out of the room. I slid my phone back into the seat pocket and pressed my heel against the floor until the vibration from the engines felt steady again. The notification sat unread, but the subject line was enough. Court systems don't send casual emails. They send records. I opened it. Notice of filing received. Motion to proceed without respondent pending review. Pending meant the door was still open. It also meant Vanessa was already inside the hallway speaking first. I pulled the window shade up a notch and watched the wing flex against a pale sky. There's a moment in every escalation where you stop guessing motives and start mapping intent. This was that moment. Airport police, airline cancellation, court motion, 3 separate systems, 1 direction. I opened my notes app and wrote 3 lines not as a plan but as a filter. What she needs, what she knows, what she risks. What she needed was my absence. Not my arrest. Not a scene. Just an empty chair with my name on it when the clerk called the case. What she knew was how institutions behave when someone sounds calm and concerned. She'd done it before with doctors, with banks, with anyone who listened to tone more than timelines. What she risked was overplaying it. My phone rang, and I recognized the number before I answered. "This is Officer Delaney," the voice said. "Airport police." I sat up straighter without thinking. "Yes, we completed the documentation from this morning," he said. "I wanted to confirm you received the incident number." "I did," I said. "There's an addendum," he continued. "Your sister called again after you cleared security." That detail landed harder than anything else that day. "Again?" I asked. "Yes. She asked whether you'd been detained and whether the report would prevent you from flying." I closed my eyes briefly, and she was informed you were cleared, he said. She didn't seem satisfied. Of course she wasn't. We noted the follow-up call, he added. Same reporting party, same concern language. "Thank you," I said. "That matters." "It does," he agreed. "If this comes up later, the timeline will be clear." When the call ended, I didn't move right away. Vanessa hadn't just called the police. She checked the result. That wasn't fear. That was management. I added a 4th line to my notes. "She's monitoring outcomes." The seatbelt sign flicked on again as the plane adjusted altitude. I didn't mind. Movement kept people seated, and seated meant quiet. Another email arrived, this one forwarded from my attorney. He'd added a single sentence above the thread. "Judge is reviewing exhibits now. No reassurance, no emojis, just information." I scrolled back through the motion Vanessa's counsel had filed. The language was careful, but it repeated itself in places it didn't need to. Safety concerns, inability to travel, detained by airport police. The same phrases my sister had used on the phone. Consistency is good until it isn't. I opened the audio note from the airport report again, listening with one earbud and volume low. Vanessa's voice sounded exactly the way it always did when she wanted someone to do something for her. Calm, reasonable, slightly wounded. "She's not thinking clearly," she said. "I just don't want anyone hurt." She never said my name in that sentence. She didn't have to. Distance makes accusations sound objective. The flight attendant passed with a cart, and I shook my head. My mouth was dry, but this wasn't thirst. It was the kind of tension that comes from watching someone else write your story in real time. I typed a short reply to the attorney. "Airport police confirmed second call by my sister after clearance. Noted in report." He replied almost immediately. "Good. That shows intent." Intent was the hinge. Accidental concern could be excused. Persistent interference couldn't. Another message came through, this time from the clerk's office. "Judge requests confirmation." "Were you arrested or restrained at the airport?" I answered without adjectives. "No arrest, no restraints. Cleared to proceed." Incident report attached reflects this. I hit send and watched the message leave the Wi-Fi wheel spinning just long enough to test my patience. Vanessa texted again. "You don't need to put yourself through this." That one earned a screenshot and nothing else. The plane began its descent, the cabin pressure shifting subtly. I folded the tray table and put the incident slip back where it belonged. Paper doesn't impress anyone until it's in the right hands. Then it's everything. At the gate, my phone buzzed with another court notification. This one longer, more formal. Motion under consideration. Court notes conflicting representations regarding airport incident. Conflicting representations was the polite way to say someone was lying. I stood with the rest of the passenger's bag on my shoulder feet, inching forward as the jet bridge connected. The moment I stepped off the plane, the terminal noise rushed back in announcements, rolling bags, the low hum of people moving with purpose. I walked fast without running. There was no benefit to looking frantic. Frantic people get managed. At the far end of the terminal, I ducked into a quiet corner near a window and called the attorney back. "She called the police again," I said when he answered. "I saw the addendum," he replied. "That helps us." "She's checking her work," I said. "Yes," he agreed. "Which means she's confident." "Or rushed," I said. He paused. Either way, the judge noticed the inconsistency. I leaned against the glass and watched a baggage cart trundle by unbothered by probate law or family disputes. "What's the risk right now?" I asked. "That the court acts before you're physically present," he said. "That's narrowing. And the upside? That the record is starting to speak for itself." I ended the call and took a breath that went all the way down, the kind you take when you stop reacting and start choosing. Vanessa had called airport police on me to create a version of reality she could move through faster than I could correct it. She'd assumed I'd panic, argue, or freeze. Instead, every call she made had left a mark. Every follow-up had sharpened the outline of what she was trying to do. I turned away from the window and headed for the exit, my phone already in my hand, ready to answer the next question from a system that was finally starting to ask the right ones. I angled toward the rideshare pickup lane instead of the taxi stand, thumb already moving to request a car, while my other hand tightened around the strap of my bag. Standing still invited interruptions. Movement bought me quiet. The app confirmed a driver 2 minutes away. I stepped to the curb, turned my back to the terminal, and opened the airline notes again, not to reread them, but to check the timestamps against the airport report. The sequence mattered. Calls that overlap look panicked. Calls that stack look planned. The driver pulled up, window rolling down. "Lauren." "That's me." I slid into the back seat, buckled in, and said the courthouse address out loud. Saying it made it real again, like naming a destination resets the day. As we merged into traffic, my phone buzzed. Airline customer service. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Ms. Whitaker." The agent said, voice careful, "We're following up on your canceled reservation." "Go ahead," I said. "We need to note that the caller who requested the cancellation contacted us again," she said. "She asked whether the ticket could be reinstated if you agreed to postpone your travel." "Postpone, not reschedule." "Postpone assumes consent you haven't given yet." "I didn't agree to anything," I said. "I know," she replied quickly. "I'm just documenting the contact." "Did she give a reason this time?" I asked. "She said you were emotionally overwhelmed and shouldn't be traveling under stress." I closed my eyes for half a beat and reopened them. Please add that I denied that claim and requested no changes to my travel without my direct authorization. "It's already in the notes," she said. "I'll also flag the reservation for in-person verification only." "Thank you," I said. "Can you email me confirmation of that?" "I can," she said. "It'll be brief." Brief is perfect. When the call ended, I leaned back and watched the city slide past the window. Vanessa wasn't trying to stop me from moving. She was trying to make every movement conditional. Every step required her permission. That's how you slow someone without ever touching them. Another message popped up, this one from the court system. Hearing time adjusted. Counsel motions under review. No explanation. No assurance. Just motion. I forwarded the airline's promised email to my attorney as soon as it arrived. Caller identified. Repeated contact. Request denied. The words weren't dramatic, but they were consistent. Consistency beats urgency every time. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. "Everything okay back there?" "Work stuff," I said. He nodded. "Always is." We pulled up near this courthouse and I paid without waiting for the receipt. Inside the building hummed with the low bureaucratic noise of people waiting their turn to be heard. I checked in with security, passed through without issue, and found a bench near a window where cell service was strong. I opened the court portal again. The motion to proceed without me was still pending. No ruling. That meant the judge hadn't accepted Vanessa's version as clean fact. It also meant the window for interference wasn't closed. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Lauren, Vanessa said, voice soft, familiar. "I hear you had trouble traveling." "I'm on my way," I said. "You don't need to do this," she said. "This could all be handled without stress." Handled by who I asked. She sighed lightly, the sound she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. "I'm just trying to protect Grandpa's wishes." "You're trying to protect your access," I said. "That's not fair." "I didn't say it was," I replied. There was a pause. Not a disconnect. A recalibration. "You're making yourself look unstable," she said. Calling lawyers? Involving police? Canceling flights. I almost laughed. Almost. You called the police, I said. You called the airline. You filed the motion. I did what I had to do, she said. Someone had to step in. I'm stepping in, I said. That's the difference. Her tone cooled a fraction. If you show up today, you're going to embarrass yourself. I ended the call. I saved the voicemail she left immediately after. Same message. Slightly different words. That mattered too. My attorney called a minute later. She contacted the airline again, he said. I know, I replied. I have it in writing. Good, he said. The judge asked about the cancellation. Asked how I said. As a timeline, he replied. Who called whom and when? Then she helped us, I said. She did, he agreed. By repeating herself. I stood and walked toward the clerk's office, not to file anything new, but to be visible. Clerks remember faces they've seen. Visibility counters absence. At the counter, I asked a single question. Has the court ruled on the motion? Not yet, the clerk said. It's under review. Thank you, I said. I stepped back, sat down and opened the call log from the night my grandfather died. I didn't read it for comfort. I read it to keep the timeline straight. Dispatch time, arrival time, names listed, names missing. Vanessa had been 15 minutes away that night too. My phone buzzed with another airline email, this one confirming in-person verification had been added to my profile. No more phone changes. No more third-party calls. It wasn't justice. It was friction. Sometimes friction is enough. The courthouse clock ticked louder than it needed to. I checked the portal again. A new entry appeared, small but important. Motion supplemented by additional exhibits. Vanessa was adding paper. That meant she felt pressure. I forwarded the airline's second confirmation to my attorney, then added a short note of my own. Airline reports repeated contact by same caller after denial. Pattern established. His reply came back quickly. That helps. I adjusted the strap of my bag and looked around the waiting area. People sat with folders and coffee cups, their disputes contained in manila envelopes. Mine was contained in timestamps and call logs, and the simple fact that someone had tried to stop me from being where I was supposed to be. I checked the time and made a decision without dramatizing it. Instead of sitting, I walked the short loop around the floor, keeping my phone in my hand and my posture steady, the way you do when you want to be seen as present, alert, and not going anywhere. I stopped pacing and sat down only when my phone vibrated with a calendar alert that hadn't existed an hour earlier. The hearing block shifted on the screen, compressed earlier than before, like someone had dragged it up with a mouse and let go without asking. I opened the docket entry. The language was procedural, clean, and frustratingly calm. Time adjusted. Motion pending. No explanation attached. Courts don't narrate motives. They record actions. I leaned back against the wall and called the clerk's office line again, keeping my voice level enough that it wouldn't sound like pressure. Pressure makes people defensive. Information makes them helpful. Probate clerk, a woman, answered, brisk and tired. My name is Lauren Whitaker, I said. I'm listed on today's docket. I saw a time adjustment and wanted to confirm the status of the motion to proceed without me. There was a pause filled with keyboard taps. Yes, she said. The motion was filed as an emergency accommodation. Has it been granted? I asked. Not yet, she said. The judge requested clarification. Clarification of what I asked. Whether you were detained by law enforcement, she said. I didn't raise my voice. I was not detained, I said. I have an incident report confirming that. I see the exhibits, she said. They're under review. Under review meant the record was doing its job. It also meant Vanessa's version hadn't been accepted at face value. Is the hearing moving forward at the adjusted time? I asked. Yes, she said. Unless the judge orders otherwise. Thank you, I said, and hung up before either of us could add tone to it. I pulled up the motion again and read it like a checklist instead of a threat. Claim of detention. Claim of inability to travel. Claim of urgency to protect the estate. Each claim depended on the one before it being true. My phone rang. My attorney again. They're pushing hard, he said. They supplemented the motion with what I asked. A declaration from Vanessa, he said. Signed this morning. That tracked. When lawyers need urgency, they attach a voice. What does she say? I asked. She says you were removed from security, he replied. That you were distressed. That she feared for public safety. She wasn't there, I said. I know, he replied. The judge knows that now, too. Then why move the hearing, I asked. To keep the docket moving, he said. Judges don't like empty calendars. But he hasn't ruled on excluding you. I watched a man in a suit walk past carrying a banker's box like it weighed something personal. What's the risk, I asked. That he allows them to proceed temporarily, he said. Not permanently. But temporarily is enough to let them touch things they shouldn't. Assets, I said. Access, he corrected. Access creates leverage. I nodded even though he couldn't see it. What do you need from me? Stay reachable, he said. And send me anything new the moment it happens. I ended the call and opened my email. Another message from the court system had arrived while we were talking. Notice counsel for petitioner requests expedited consideration. Expedited meant they wanted a decision before I could sit in the room and make myself inconvenient. I stood and walked to the clerk's window again, not to argue, but to anchor my presence. When the clerk looked up, I met her eyes and kept my hands visible. I just want to confirm, I said. I'm physically present in the building. She nodded. I see you checked in. Thank you, I said. That's all. I stepped away and felt the tension in my shoulders ease a fraction. Presence is a fact. Facts accumulate. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. They're going to move forward. You should let them. I didn't answer. I took a screenshot and added it to the folder I'd been building without naming it. Naming things gives them power. Files don't need names. They need order. Another notification came in, this one longer. Order under advisement. I read it twice. Under advisement meant the judge had paused. Pauses are where bad stories fall apart. I called the airport police non-emergency line and asked for the records desk. When the officer answered, I gave my incident number and requested confirmation of the addendum regarding the follow-up call. We have it, he said. Same reporting party, documented. Can you email confirmation to my attorney, I asked. Yes, he said. I'll include the timestamps. Thank you, I said. I forwarded the request details to my attorney and sat down again, this time opening the call log from the night my grandfather died and lining it up beside the court motion on my screen. The contrast was stark. One was messy human, full of imperfect typing done under pressure. The other was polished, confident, and detached from anything that had actually happened. The courthouse loudspeaker crackled with a muffled announcement I didn't need to understand. My phone vibrated again. Email from the clerk. Judge requests clarification. Have you been charged with any offense related to the airport incident? I replied immediately. No charges, no arrest, no detention. Incident report attached, reflects clearance. I hit send and watched the message leave the little arrow disappearing like it had somewhere important to be. Vanessa called again. I let it ring out this time. The voicemail icon appeared seconds later. I'm trying to help you, her voice said. This doesn't have to be adversarial. I saved it and added it to the stack. Help doesn't require erasing someone. Help doesn't start with police reports and end with court motions. My attorney texted, Airport police confirmation received. Judge acknowledged. That was the first time all day I let myself sit still without moving. Not because it was over, but because the pieces were finally arranged where they could be seen together. I checked the docket once more. A new line had appeared beneath the motion. Hearing continued. Parties to be heard. I stood, adjusted my jacket, and stepped closer to the courtroom doors. Not rushing, not hesitating, just placing myself where my name belonged on the list, while the system finished deciding whether it would let a story built on concern outrun the one built on records. I squared my shoulders outside the courtroom and did what years in uniform had trained me to do. When the noise gets loud, I reduced everything to tasks. Not feelings, not intentions. Tasks. Phone in hand, I opened a fresh note and typed a header the way I'd learned to label briefings: date, location, purpose. It wasn't for the court. It was for me. Order keeps you from chasing ghosts. I listed what I had, not what I wanted. Airport incident report cleared to proceed. Airline cancellation notes with caller identity. Follow-up calls documented by airport police. Texts and voicemails showing pressure and repetition. Call log from the night my grandfather died, requested weeks earlier and received without fanfare. Each item sat on its own line, boring and undeniable. What I didn't list were opinions. Opinions slow you down. My attorney stepped out of the courtroom and caught my eye. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He tilted his head once the smallest acknowledgement that timing mattered. Judges reviewing everything together, he said quietly. He asked for a clean timeline. I can give him that, I said. I know, he replied. Send it exactly how you'd brief a commander. That was the point. I wasn't here to persuade with emotion. I was here to remove doubt. I sat on a bench and opened my laptop, balancing it on my knees. The courthouse Wi-Fi hesitated, then connected. I built the timeline in plain text, minute by minute, where it mattered, leaving gaps where nothing happened. Empty space tells its own story. 0712 Airport Police Report received. 0726 Reporting Party identified. 0741 Clearance issued. No detention. 0758 Follow-up call by same reporting party. 0803 Airline cancellation by same caller. 0819 Second airline contact requesting postponement. 0902 Motion filed alleging detention. I attached the supporting documents in the same order. No commentary, no adjectives. The court didn't need my interpretation. It needed the sequence. When I finished, I sent the file to my attorney and copied the clerk's secure inbox, labeling it Supplemental Timeline. Not argument. Timeline. My phone buzzed with the message from my unit's legal assistance office, a reply I'd requested earlier that morning and almost forgotten in the noise. It was short and to the point, confirming my service status, active duty. No adverse actions, no restrictions on travel. It didn't say anything about character. It didn't need to. I forwarded that too. Across the hall, Vanessa's voice floated out of the courtroom, rising and falling with practiced concern. I didn't listen for content. I listened for rhythm. She spoke in generalities the way people do when specifics might trap them. I closed my laptop and stood stretching my neck once. The bailiff opened the door and called my name. Inside the room felt smaller than it looked on paper. The judge sat forward, glasses low on his nose, a stack of documents arranged neatly to his right. Vanessa sat at counsel table, hands folded, eyes fixed ahead like a student waiting to be called on. When she glanced at me, her expression didn't change. That told me everything. My attorney introduced me briefly. No speech, just presence. The judge looked down at the stack. Ms. Whitaker, he said to me, I've reviewed the supplemental timeline you submitted. Yes, Your Honor, I said. You've denied being detained at the airport, he continued. That's correct. And you've submitted documentation supporting that denial, he said. Yes, he turned a page. I also have documentation showing repeated contacts by the same family member to both airport police and the airline. Yes. Vanessa's attorney shifted in his chair. The judge raised a hand without looking at him. I'm not asking for argument yet, the judge said. I'm establishing facts. He glanced up at Vanessa. Ms. Whitaker, he said, did you contact airport police regarding your sister on the morning of this hearing? She inhaled. I did, she said, out of concern. And did you contact them again after she was cleared, he asked. She hesitated. I followed up, she said. I wanted to be sure. The judge nodded once and made a note. And did you contact the airline regarding her reservation? Yes, she said. I was worried she wasn't in a good state to travel. The judge turned to me. You did not authorize that contact, he said. No, I replied. He leaned back slightly. And the motion before me alleges that you were detained by law enforcement, he said, tapping the paper, which appears inconsistent with the incident report. Vanessa's attorney stood. Your Honor, the declaration was based on information provided by my client, which is precisely the issue, the judge said, holding up a hand. Information. He looked back at the timeline. This sequence suggests a pattern of interference rather than a single expression of concern. Vanessa's jaw tightened, just barely. The judge addressed the room, voice even. When a party attempts to prevent another from appearing by leveraging law enforcement and third-party services, the court takes that seriously. I kept my hands folded and my eyes forward. This wasn't a victory lap. It was a correction. He continued, I am not ruling on the merits of the estate today. I am ruling on process. He turned to the clerk. The motion to proceed without Ms. Whitaker is denied. Vanessa's attorney opened his mouth. The judge didn't look at him. I will not allow a party to benefit from circumstances they helped create, the judge said. The hearing will proceed with all parties present. A murmur moved through the benches. I didn't react. Reactions are for after. The judge wasn't finished. I am also directing counsel to preserve all communications related to the airport report and airline contacts, he said. Failure to do so will be addressed. He glanced at Vanessa. Do you understand? Yes, she said, voice tight. The judge nodded and looked back to the clerk. Set a continued date to allow Ms. Whitaker adequate opportunity to appear without obstruction. My attorney placed a hand lightly on my arm, a reminder to stay still. I did. As the judge turned to the next item on the docket, I stepped back toward the aisle, the air in the room feeling less compressed than it had an hour earlier. Not lighter, just more honest. In the hallway, my phone buzzed again. A new entry had posted to the docket. The language formal and spare, reflecting exactly what had just happened without commentary or emphasis. Records don't gloat, they remember. I checked the time and made one more choice before anyone could suggest one for me. I emailed the airline and airport police a single line each requesting confirmation that my profile and incident number reflected the court's findings. Not as a threat, as maintenance. When I slid my phone back into my pocket, Vanessa brushed past me without speaking, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. She didn't look at me this time. I adjusted my jacket, stepped into the flow of people moving toward the exit, and kept my pace steady the way you do when you've stopped reacting and started managing the aftermath, while the paperwork catches up to the truth. I didn't slow down until I hit the stairwell, pushing through the heavy door and letting it close behind me with a dull thud. The hallway noise dropped away, replaced by the quiet echo of my own footsteps as I went down one flight instead of taking the elevator. Standing still after something like that makes your body invent emotions you don't need. Halfway down, my phone vibrated again. Court notification. I stopped on the landing and opened it. Notice petition for temporary appointment remains under consideration pending additional review. Denied the motion to proceed without me didn't mean everything else died with it. Vanessa had filed more than one request. She always did. When one door closed, she leaned on another and hoped the hinge would give. I stepped out into the lower hallway and leaned against the wall long enough to pull up the petition she'd filed earlier that morning. Temporary executor. Limited scope. Emergency authority. The language was narrower now, trimmed down to look reasonable instead of aggressive. That was new. This version didn't depend on my absence. It depended on urgency. The argument was simple. Assets needed immediate oversight. Accounts needed protection, bills needed paying, and I was allegedly unavailable due to ongoing travel complications. She wasn't trying to erase me anymore. She was trying to work around me. I called my attorney back before the thought could settle. She's still pushing, I said when he answered. I see it, he replied. This one's closer. Closer to what I asked. Closer to being granted on a temporary basis, he said. Not because she's right. Because courts don't like assets in limbo. I closed my eyes briefly. What's the window? Minutes, he said. Maybe less. That was the first time all day the word almost showed up in my head. I opened my laptop again, hands steady, and scanned the petition line by line. She'd attached a bank statement I recognized and an invoice from a contractor I'd never heard of. Emergency expenses. Immediate risk. Those charges are new, I said. They weren't pending last week. That's the problem, he replied. They look recent. Can you object? I asked. I can, he said. But I need a reason beyond distrust. I thought of my grandfather's house, the old filing cabinet in the den that still smelled faintly of dust and coffee. I thought of the call log from the night he died, the notes that listed who answered questions and who didn't. I thought of the checking account he'd used for years, the one he'd told me about, because he was tired of having to explain withdrawals. Give me 2 minutes, I said. I hung up and opened the banking app tied to the account I was authorized to view but not control. The login took longer than usual, the spinning wheel eating into time I didn't have. When it loaded, I scrolled straight to the transactions Vanessa had flagged as urgent. 2 charges. Same day, same vendor, both pending. I pulled up the vendor name and searched it. Local. Recently registered. The address matched a mailbox store 3 blocks from Vanessa's apartment. I took screenshots, then pulled the business registration page showing the filing date. 3 days ago. I called my attorney back immediately. The vendor is new, I said. Registered 3 days ago. Mailbox address. Charges are pending, not settled. He paused. Send me proof. I did, attaching everything in one email with no commentary. He replied almost instantly. That helps, he said. That helps a lot. My phone vibrated again. Another court notification. Judge requests clarification on urgency of requested appointment. I forwarded the email chain to the clerk's secure inbox and typed a single sentence in the message body. Petition relies on pending charges from recently registered entity. Screenshots attached. I hit send and didn't wait for confirmation. Waiting burns time. Vanessa called. I declined it. She texted instead. You're holding things up. This is irresponsible. I saved it and moved on. My attorney called back. Judge is reviewing, he said. He asked where you are right now. In the building, I said. Good, he replied. That matters. I sat on the bench outside the courtroom again, laptop closed, now phone resting face up on my thigh. People passed with folders and files, their problems contained within pages. Mine kept trying to escape the margins. The clerk stepped out and looked around, eyes scanning the hallway. When she spotted me, she nodded once and went back inside without saying anything. That nod was the first sign all afternoon that someone else had noticed how hard Vanessa was pushing. My phone buzzed again. Order issued. I opened it with my thumb. Petition for temporary appointment denied pending full hearing. Court notes insufficient showing of emergency. I didn't move. I read it twice, then a third time, letting the words settle into place without turning them into anything else. Denied pending full hearing. That didn't mean it was over. It meant the door stayed closed for now. Vanessa stormed out of the courtroom seconds later, her face, tight eyes sharp. She stopped when she saw me sitting there. This is ridiculous, she said. You're sabotaging everything. I stood slowly, keeping my voice even. I'm showing up, she scoffed. You always do this. You make things complicated. You make them urgent, I said. There's a difference. She opened her mouth, then closed it, recalibrating in real time. Without another word, she turned and walked away, heels striking the floor harder than necessary. My attorney came out a moment later. That was close, he said quietly. I know, I replied. She tried to manufacture an emergency. He continued. If you hadn't caught the vendor issue. I did, I said. He nodded. Yes, you did. We stood there for a second, neither of us saying anything else. Silence after pressure feels louder than shouting. My phone vibrated once more, this time with a routine email from my unit administrator confirming my leave extension had been approved. I forwarded it to my attorney without comment. Availability matters as much as presence. As we turned back toward the courtroom, I felt the edge of the day shift again. Not toward relief. Toward something steadier. Vanessa had run out of clean angles. Every move she made now left marks she couldn't wipe off fast enough. I stepped through the doors with my attorney beside me, the bench warm where I'd just been sitting, the record a little heavier than it had been an hour ago, and the space around me finally wide enough to breathe without having to check whether someone was trying to close it again. I took the seat my attorney indicated without looking back toward the gallery, set my phone face down on the table, and folded my hands the way I'd learned to do in briefings when the room mattered more than the speaker. The courtroom settled into that specific quiet where papers stop rustling and people stop whispering because they know the next voice will carry. The judge adjusted his glasses and looked down at the stack of documents in front of him. He didn't rush. He didn't look at either side yet. He started reading. For the record, he said the court has received multiple filings today related to alleged emergency circumstances. Vanessa sat straight. Chin-lifted hands clasped so tightly, her knuckles had gone pale. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. She'd already decided how this was supposed to end. The judge continued flipping a page. The court has also received supplemental exhibits submitted by Ms. Lauren Whitaker. He finally looked up, eyes landing on me briefly, not kindly or harshly, just confirming I existed. These exhibits include an airport police incident report. He said airline customer service records and a dispatch call log. He paused long enough for the words to register. Taken together, he said they present a timeline that differs materially from the representations made in the emergency motion. Vanessa's attorney shifted in his chair. The judge noticed and held up a hand. I am going to read portions of the record, he said. Not to argue them, but to clarify them. He read the incident number aloud, the date and time, and the notation that followed, questioned, identified, cleared to proceed. No arrest, no detention, no restraints. He looked up. Ms. Whitaker, he said to me, you were not detained at the airport. No, Your Honor, I said. He nodded and continued. The airline records indicate a cancellation requested by a third party identifying herself as your sister. Vanessa's attorney stood. Your Honor. The judge didn't look at him. Sit down, he said, not sharply but firmly. You'll have an opportunity. He read the airline note verbatim, including the reason provided not safe to travel alone. He then read the follow-up note documenting a second call after the cancellation was denied. 2 separate contacts, he said. Same caller. He turned another page. The airport police addendum notes a follow-up inquiry by the same reporting party after clearance was issued. He stopped there and set the papers down. That is not a single expression of concern, the judge said. That is a pattern. Vanessa inhaled sharply, then forced her face back into stillness. It was the first crack. The judge finally looked directly at her. Ms. Whitaker, he said, did you contact airport police regarding your sister on the morning of this hearing? Yes, she said. I was worried. Did you do so more than once, he asked. She hesitated just long enough to be noticeable. I followed up, she said. And did you contact the airline regarding her reservation, he asked. Yes, she said again. Because I believed she was under extreme stress. The judge nodded once and made a note. He turned back to the record. The motion before me states that Ms. Lauren Whitaker was detained and unable to attend this hearing. He tapped the page. That statement is inaccurate. Vanessa's attorney stood again. Your Honor, the declaration was made in good faith based on information provided by my client, and that is precisely why I am addressing it. The judge said, cutting him off. Good faith does not excuse inaccurate representations when they are used to request extraordinary relief. The room went still. The judge continued, voice even. The court does not take lightly attempts to prevent a party from appearing, particularly when those attempts involve law enforcement and third-party service providers. He looked back at Vanessa. Ms. Whitaker, do you understand that? Yes, she said, voice tight. He leaned back slightly. This court is denying the motion to proceed without Ms. Lauren Whitaker. The court is also denying the request for temporary appointment based on alleged emergency circumstances. Vanessa's attorney opened his mouth again. The judge raised a finger. I am not finished, he said. He picked up the dispatch call log, the pages slightly curled at the corners. The court has also reviewed the emergency call log from the night of the decedent's death. That one landed. Vanessa's head snapped up. This log, the judge said, indicates the decedent was coherent, responsive, and capable of providing information. It also documents who was present and who was not. He did not read the names aloud. He didn't have to. Anyone who had looked at the exhibit understood the implication. The judge placed the papers back on the stack. The court finds no basis at this time to question the decedent's capacity as asserted in the filings. Vanessa's composure finally slipped. That's not fair. She said the words leaving her mouth before her attorney could stop them. The judge fixed her with a look that carried weight without volume. Ms. Whitaker, he said, you do not speak unless asked. She pressed her lips together and nodded. He turned to the clerk. The court is continuing this matter to allow all parties to be heard in full without interference. He looked back at both sides. Any further attempts to manufacture urgency or misrepresent facts will be addressed accordingly. That was as close as he came to a warning. The gavel came down once clean and controlled. As the courtroom stirred, my attorney leaned toward me and spoke quietly. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Vanessa stood abruptly, gathering her bag with movements that were too sharp to be accidental. She brushed past our table without looking at me. Her shoulder clipped by the chair, she didn't bother to straighten. In the aisle, she turned back just once. Her eyes flicked to the stack of papers on the judge's bench, then to me. There was no anger there now, just calculation trying to catch up with consequences. I remained seated until the bailiff signaled it was clear to stand. When I did, my legs felt steady the way they do after a long march when your body has accepted that forward is the only direction left. Outside the courtroom, my phone buzzed with a new docket entry posting the language spare and official, reflecting exactly what had been said without emotion or emphasis. Records don't editorialize. They persist. My attorney tapped the screen, nodded once, and slipped the phone back into his pocket. That's on the record now, he said. I adjusted the strap of my bag and stepped into the flow of people leaving the hallway, the sound of voices rising and falling around me, the ordinary noise of a courthouse resuming its rhythm. while the version of events Vanessa had tried to rush through quietly sat where it belonged, flattened into ink and time ready to follow her wherever she tried to take it next. I stepped outside into the late afternoon light and let the courthouse doors swing shut behind me, the air warmer than it had been that morning, the sounds of traffic louder and less careful. My phone vibrated again, not with urgency this time, but with the steady drip of confirmations, emails, docket updates, routine notices that arrive when systems finish doing what they're supposed to do. I didn't stop walking. Stopping invites reflection, and reflection invites second-guessing. I crossed the street, cut through the small park across from the building, and sat on the low stone wall where people usually wait for rides. The stone was cool through my jacket. That felt right. My attorney called. The clerk posted the order, he said. Denials are entered. Continuance is set. Good, I said. There's more, he added. The judge directed counsel to preserve all communications related to today's filings. That includes the airport report and the airline contacts. I pictured Vanessa's phone, her emails, the neat folders she liked to keep. Preservation orders don't accuse. They remember. Thank you, I said. Get some rest, he replied. We'll regroup tomorrow. I ended the call and checked my messages. One from the airline confirming the in-person verification flag remained active. One from airport police acknowledging receipt of the court's request to retain records associated with my incident number. Maintenance, not drama. That was the theme now. A text from Vanessa came through. Just one line. You didn't have to make this public. I didn't reply. I archived it with the rest. Public isn't something you make. It's something that happens when paper meets process. I stood and started toward the parking garage, choosing the longer route without thinking. My body needed movement. Halfway there, my phone rang again, this time from my unit administrator. Leave extension approved, she said. Command asked me to check if you're okay. I'm fine, I said. Thank you. Take the time you need, she replied. We've got you. That mattered more than I let on. Not as protection. As confirmation that the version of me Vanessa had tried to paint hadn't stuck anywhere it wasn't supposed to. In the garage, I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine, hands resting on the steering wheel, feeling the quiet hum of nothing happening. When I turned the key, the radio came on mid-sentence with a news update I didn't listen to. I turned it off and drove. At a red light, another email arrived from the court. Automatic. Procedural. The continued hearing date confirmed. All parties to appear. No emergency accommodations granted without notice to both sides. That line was new. I smiled once, small and involuntary, then let it go. By the time I reached the hotel, the sun had dipped lower shadows, stretching across the lot. I checked in, took the key card, and rode the elevator up without looking at the mirror. In the room, I set my bag down and lined up the papers on the desk the way I always do, documents flat edges aligned, phone on the right, wallet on the left. Order doesn't celebrate, it prepares. I showered, changed, and sat on the edge of the bed with my laptop open, not to work, but to make sure everything was backed up where it needed to be. Cloud folder, email archive, external drive. Redundancy isn't paranoia. It's insurance. My phone buzzed again. Voicemail from Vanessa. I was just trying to do what I thought was best. Her voice said softer now. You always make things so official. I saved it and closed the app. Intent doesn't override effect, especially not in writing. A knock sounded at the door. Housekeeping with fresh towels I hadn't requested. I thanked her, closed the door, and noticed my hands felt steady. Not relieved. Steady. I sat at the desk and opened the call log one last time, not because I needed it, but because it had earned its place. Dispatch notes, timestamps, names, the mundane hero of the day. Not my voice, not my uniform, just a record that didn't care who wanted what. My phone chimed with the final notification before I set it face down for the night. An internal note from the clerk's office acknowledging receipt of the judge's directive. Records preserved. That was it. No fireworks, no speeches, just gravity reasserting itself. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the HVAC unit cycling on and off. Tomorrow would bring more paperwork, more measured conversations, more careful steps. But the shape of the thing had changed. The effort to erase me had left a trail, and trails don't disappear just because someone wishes they would. When I turned off the light, the room went dark without drama, and the quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was full of facts aligned and waiting, doing what they always do when someone finally lets them staying put. I didn't win because I fought louder. I won because I stayed present, stayed documented, and didn't let family drama rewrite facts into fiction. This wasn't just about inheritance or a will hearing. It was about how easily systems can be bent and how quietly they can be corrected when you don't panic. Family revenge stories aren't always explosive. Sometimes they're just about refusing to disappear when someone close to you tries to erase you. If stories like this matter to you, real family drama, real consequences and revenge that doesn't cross the line, subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are coming, and every detail counts. Every detail counts. Every detail counts. Every detail counts. Every detail counts.